Hello everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome to the first live stream of 2024. If you haven't attended these before, the plan is to do them every Friday. I might start doing another one during the week as well, just to perhaps have a look at markets on a Wednesday evening. I'll see how I fix the next couple of weeks and give those a go and see how popular they are, but the Friday ones will continue. So in this, we have a quick look ahead to the major events for next week. It's all about inflation next week. Then we'll jump on the charts, have a look at the major markets, stock market indices, some currency markets, gold, oil, natural gas, Bitcoin, all that sort of stuff. And then if there's anything that you want looking at, if you put it in the chat on YouTube while you're watching, we'll take a look at it once we looked at those. We've had the payrolls out. The non-farm payrolls came out about an hour ago. The US unemployment numbers, better than expected. I think the expectation was for 175,000 jobs to be added in December, and the number came in at 216,000. So a bit of volatility in markets. This is the dollar index that we're looking at here. I thought this was interesting how this reacted. We have had, since just after Christmas, this trend higher in the dollar index. We can see a bit of volatility. It traded as high as 103, and we're now 102.47. So it's given up 50 plus points since the payrolls come out. I wonder if this will be an interesting one for later on this afternoon. I'd still be tempted to be a buyer of the dollar index, assuming things calm down a bit as we get the payrolls dust settles. So that could be an interesting one. But anyway, let's take a look at it again in a bit more detail. Let's just get some of the housekeeping done. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, so next week, like I said, it's all about inflation next week. I can't remember a week like this, but here we go. Kicking it off from Monday, Japanese inflation data comes out. Wednesday, Aussie inflation data. Thursday, US inflation data. And Friday, China inflation data. So yeah, big week. I think inflation has perhaps started to drop off or drop down the list of what's important for markets, as we have seen inflation ease back, haven't we, in recent months? Perhaps a bit more than was expected. But let's see what happens. Perhaps we'll have a shock in there at the beginning of the year that sparks a bit of excitement into markets, although it has been a pretty volatile few days anyway as the year started. So those are the major things for next week. So for me, I mean, US inflation on Thursday is probably the big one. We have seen in recent months, some reasonable volatility on US inflation data. Okay, that's it. Quick word from my sponsor, which is me. I run a trading course, been running it for a few years now. Medium-term trading and short-term trading, all my approaches are covered in the course. Lots of video lessons, 18 video lessons in total. Live webinars run by me as part of the course, and a WhatsApp group as well. If you've watched the videos before, you've heard me talk about the course. I did this open trading thing. It's over a year ago now, but I did it from November 22 to January 2023 using the principles I outlined on the course with a £4,000 account. Booked profits of just under £2,200. So that did okay. I did it again in May to July of last year. May, June, July, 3 months with a £5,000 account this time. Booked profits were 3,116. How many trades did I do? 48 trades over a 3-month period, which is probably pretty much par for the course. I probably do typically 20 trades a month, if that. So all of the details for all of this is on the website. I launched the WhatsApp group as part of the trading course for people who've been on the course, but I opened this up last year. I think it was in the summer of last year. So you can join the WhatsApp group separately if you want to. It's a daily update from me, markets that I'm watching, trades I'm running, Q&A session. Any questions, you can pop them in. during the day. If you sign up, you can go to the website and try it for a month. If you use the code YouTube, you get 50% off. Not 50%, what am I talking about? You get 20% off the first month's subscription. So if you go to the website, all the details are in the the description, davidjonestrading.co.uk. If you go to subscribe, you can sign up to the WhatsApp group in there. You can see the courses. You can see a bit more detail about my performance. If you scroll down, you can see the trades that made up that bit of the performance there in more detail. Those trades I did in that 3-month period, how it all broke down. So there's a lot of information on the website there, and you can sign up and try the WhatsApp group and see what you think. That's a snapshot of what it looks like. What did I say was interesting today? I think because the payrolls are coming out today, I was a bit cautious, but I thought the dollar index was interesting. Stock market indices are interesting because they've been so battered so far this year, but we'll take a look at that in a bit more depth in a second. So for the trading course, 5-star Trustpilot reviews. There's a newsletter I do as well. That's free. If you go to the website, you can sign up for that on the front page of the website, and it's all on the website, and blah, blah, blah. There you go. Okay, so that's it. That's all that. Let's take a look at these markets. It has been a confusing week for me. I've had a run of losing trades. I've had, I think, 3 trades I've done this year have all been losers so far. I haven't had that sort of run since August of last year. So my last losing month was August, and then September, October, November, December were winning months. I was the wrong way around on a couple of things so far this month, but it's only the first week of the month. Let's see what happens. But let's take a look at some of these markets in a bit more detail. I mean, if you look at stock markets, I am surprised how far we have seen this slide. This is the S&P 500. Let's look at the dailies. I do wonder if we'll see this market snap back next week. I think it's an interesting one to watch. Let's see how it finishes today. But, the end of the year, or after Christmas, we saw the S&P trade up towards 4,800. The all-time highs from the S&P from January 22, so 2 years ago now, were up at 48.17. So it came fairly close to those all-time highs. We have seen the market turn around. So if you thought this was the start of the great 2024 bear market, then it's time to go short. I don't think it is just yet, but it's a market that's still weak. We had that incredible run from October, late October, into December, where we've hardly got any down days, have we? It's incredible. We had that big down day, 20th of December, and the market bounced back. But here we are, 1, 2, 3, 4 down days on the trot so far for the S&P, starting 28th of December. So let's see what happens. I'm still expecting the bounce. So for me, what's interesting is how it all finishes up today. So again, I said in the WhatsApp group this morning, we have had this steady decline. We've got this big level from mid-December. The market's punched through it. Do we get a day of chop and perhaps start to build something of a base? Let's see. Let's see what happens. But I think it'll be interesting to see how that finishes today. But, a sizable sell-off compared to what we've experienced recently in the S&P. Same story for the NASDAQ. Let's just take those lines off. And again, I wonder, let's see how it ends today. But we'd had that bounce back from about 14,000 on the NASDAQ in late October, 17,000, 28th of December, which was all-time highs, taking out the old highs from back here in November 21. And here we are down at 16.3. So the market's dropped back 700 points. What's that? Not quite 5%, 4%, 3%, something like that, from those highs. So I think these are really interesting markets to watch into next week. I'm expecting a bounce back. I wouldn't be a buyer today because these markets are still weak, but it's quite interesting how they've reacted to the payrolls. Let's see if this reaction carries on. That's it. That's it for me on these markets. Let's see what happens next week. DAX, DAX is one of my losers this week. It was a winner and a loser. I had a trade open from before Christmas on the DAX. I think in here somewhere, perhaps somewhere like 16.6 something. And then first trading day of the year, the market ran up 300 points. I thought happy days. Moved my stop loss to trailing. Came out of that for a profit. bought back in again here, and it's just dumped. So that was one of the losers I've had this week on the DAX. If you take a look at the dailies again, this again is another market that broke out to, I'm guessing this is all-time highs, end of last year. Actually did it in July, sold off, and then did it again. Let's see what happens. I think again it's going to be another interesting week. I mean, for me, on the dailies, I would absolutely be looking to buy the dip on the DAX, assuming that we have had a breakout, market sells off a bit, and bang, off we go again, higher. But it's still weak, so let's see. And some pretty scrappy trading over the last few days or so on the DAX, but an interesting market. FTSE, as usual, the FTSE doing its own thing, a little bit sideways. I mean, the FTSE is an odd one. It's very different makeup to some of these other indices. Flat year last year for the FTSE, and just stuck in this big sideways range for pretty much the last 7 months. We're near the top of the range. I don't know for the FTSE. I do trade it from a short-term point of view, because obviously we do get, if we flip this over to the hourlies, we do get good trends in the FTSE. I'd still be tempted to be a buyer, because if we go back to these late October lows, I think the trend for the FTSE is still up. Sort of. Looking something like that. But it's all a bit, if you look at the last couple of weeks or so, it's all a bit scrappy, isn't it? It is to me anyway. So not much for me in there at the moment, the FTSE. The Nikkei, I didn't go short this week, but I thought it was interesting, the Nikkei, the Japanese market. If we go on the dailies, first of all, we had those highs in the Nikkei in June last year, up at 34,000. The market sells off into October, bounces back, and here we are again. So again, if the Nikkei, the Japanese index, is going to run out of steam anywhere, perhaps this is the place. Let's see. Let's see what happens up here. But I thought on the hourlies, it was interesting because it rallied up, and this whole sort of 33.5, 33.6 area has been a problem, but I'm not that convinced either way. I feel that way about a lot of markets at the moment. At the end of this week, I really don't have much of a clue in either direction, or much of an opinion in either direction. I have to wait and see. So yeah, let's see how we get on next week. But for me, the interesting stock markets next week will be the US ones, the NASDAQ and the S&P. Do we see a bit of strength coming back after what has been a fairly persistent sell-off by recent standards? Well, I don't know. But if we do, then I'll be looking to be a buyer. So I think it could be an interesting week next week for the S&P and the NASDAQ, even though I'm a bit non-committal at the end of this week. Let's talk about the dollar index. So this is one I do think in the short term is perhaps a trade. Again, a bit of a strange last 6 months for the dollar index. If we go back to July last year, we'd had this sell-off that started in September 22. The market made new lows in July of last year, pretty bearish, and then bang, we've had this massive rally. So quite choppy old market for the dollar index. What would you do? We had the lows from the summer down here at 99.5. The market did trade as low as 100.7 or something. And we've bounced back. Absolutely, you could say the trend is still down off the highs, off the 1st of November highs. It's perhaps having a little go through the trend line at the moment. So we could say the trend is down there. If we look on the hourlies, the trend is up. So like I say, this is potentially for me a trade for later today. Maybe we'll do a trade now or a bit later in the session. But I think it's interesting because the trend has been up. We've had that volatility over the payrolls. Do things calm down and it carries on trying to chug higher from here? I don't know, but perhaps an interesting market to watch for the rest of the day for that one, the dollar index. Which leads us into things like euro, US dollar. I did mention this one again this morning in the WhatsApp group, saying, it was maybe a buy for the brave. And it's done okay. It's on a big level in the short term, going back to pre-Christmas, a week before Christmas. Sort of 109 had been support. We saw the market rally 200 points higher. We've come back to it and we're hanging around. And it's an interesting trade with stops the other side of 109. If we go back and look at the bigger picture, absolutely, we've got an uptrend for the euro since September 2022. We had a big downtrend from July to October, but it's shaken that off, and here we are. So for me, I'd probably still be a buyer of the euro on dips if we had a bigger dip, particularly on the daily charts. Makes it a bit more interesting. So again, I thought, that was an interesting shorter term idea for today. Let's see how that ends up as the day goes on. If we look at pound against the dollar, again, we had quite a big correction from July into October because of the US dollar strength. Since then, we've seen a bounce back for the pound. It looks like 126 has held again. 126, here we go. That's been quite the level. 126.10 in the short term over the last 3 weeks. We've seen that level hold, but fairly directionless overall. Pretty sideways. Which again, for me, I don't really trade sideways markets. So when markets are going sideways, it's always a difficult time for me. So, but let's see. So much of this hinges on whether what happens with the US dollar, obviously. So let's see what happens. Oil. This is the one I got wrong-footed on. I bought oil. I think I bought this. When did I buy it? Maybe the end of last year. I think it would have been. Was it only a week ago? Yeah, it was only a week ago, wasn't it? I bought oil in here, looking for the bounce. Had a bit of a bounce as the year got underway, then dumped on whenever that was, 2nd of Jan. I got stopped out and the market's bounced back. So it's a bit unfortunate, that one. I think it's a difficult market again, oil now. If we look at the last couple of weeks or so, again, a little bit scrappy. From a longer term point of view, it's perhaps a bit more interesting if we're looking at, well, where do we think oil might go in the next, few months or so. We did have a base for oil, March to June last year, from 64 to about 67. The market's come down to 68 in mid-December. So is this where we see oil build a bit of a base and perhaps a rally? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what happens. But for me, if I was bullish on oil for the next few months, I think it's an interesting trade down here to be a buyer and put a stop under the December lows. The December lows are just the other side of 68. So that's interesting. But again, you can see fairly directionless few weeks, but maybe we'll see oil try to attempt some sort of turnaround from down here. My first target would be for a run back up to the November highs around about $80. Let's see what happens. Natural gas. This has been a good trend in natural gas. I missed a trade. It's always the way, I find. If you're having a bit of a bad run in trading, you miss the good trades. And I missed a good trade in natural gas this week. It was a great little bounce back to sort of a buy around about 260 earlier this week, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. So we've had this great trend in natural gas in the short term from the 13th December lows around about 220. Trades up to 290-ish yesterday, and here we are now at 277. So we've had a good run. That trend is still in place. So from a short-term point of view, I'd still be a buyer of natural gas. If we look on the hourlies, we were having this good recovery last year in gas, and it did just dump through it in November. So again, over the last, I suppose, 8 months or so, it's perhaps all a little bit sideways still, natural gas. Perhaps 3 ends up being a problem again. But for me, on the hourlies at least, that trend is still up in natural gas. So I'd be inclined to be a buyer. And if I was a buyer, I'd have my stop at least the other side of 255, the lows from a week ago. So about, 22, 23 points lower than where we are now. Because this is a volatile market. We need to give it a bit of room to move around. So let's see what happens with that. But that's for me is a clear trend going on in natural gas. Let's see how that works out. Gold, I think, again, the problem for me here, there's an argument for being a buyer or a seller in gold. We'd had the good trend run up pre-Christmas and after Christmas, and then we've been sliding, gone the other way. It's another market that perhaps is a bit of a coin flip market for me at the moment. Arguably that trend since October is still going. Let's take a look at that in the short term. There we go. If we picked it up from there, perhaps looks, I don't know, something like that. Perhaps, I don't know. That's probably not the best way of drawing it. Perhaps that trend looks like it's over as well. So it's just all a bit choppy for me, gold. If I was a seller now, I'd go short and have a stop at 2070. If I was a buyer, I'd be picking the other side of these lows down here, 2015. So, you know, pick a direction. So for me at least, there's no clear direction for this market at the moment. I'd probably lean towards being more a buyer than a seller. But let's see. You know, we have had some good moves in gold over recent months, but over the past 3 weeks or so, it's all a little bit too scrappy for me. So look at silver. So silver, again, you know, we have had this trend in silver since October. It's arguably a buy, silver. I think that for me is more clear cut than gold. Okay, it's had a little wobble through the trend line, but if I was a buyer of silver now at 23, I'd have my stop at least the other side of 22.50. So let's have a look at that on the hourlies. You know, you can see how clear a level that was mid-December. The price of silver did rocket off there. So we are back down to what has been a big level for silver. But so much of this, of course, depends on what is going to happen with the US dollar. I think the dollar index is still sliding. Yeah, it's still sliding so far. But that level on silver, I think, is an interesting one. Down at 22.50, like I say. What else are we going to look at? Bitcoin. I think this is some really odd moves on Bitcoin. But depending on what you read, there could be a decision on this Bitcoin exchange traded fund next week. And then other sources say there won't be a decision on the Bitcoin exchange traded fund. So who knows? So they're waiting for a decision from the SEC, the US Securities and Exchange Commission, isn't it? There we go. Bitcoin edges lower as traders await SEC Bitcoin ETF move. Okay, expected between January the 8th and January the 10th. Let's see. It'd be quite interesting to see what the market reaction is to that. You know, if we go back and look at the bigger picture for Bitcoin, you know, we were looking at this all last year. The trend was up, you know, back in September. It was about 26,000. Nice little trend, chugging away. And here we are now, bang, up at 43. What's going to happen when the news comes out? It could be a classic example of buy the rumor. So perhaps, you know, what's fueled perhaps at least some of this latest bit of the rise is anticipation of this exchange traded fund being okayed. And if it does get okayed, the news is out there and perhaps we see a sell-off. I don't know. It's going to be interesting though to see what happens. You know, we do have a big hurdle up at 48,000 for Bitcoin, the highs from March 2022. So what's that? 22-month highs. So interesting to see. For me, it's more interesting if it does sort of dump and we have a bit of a sell-off, but we then go back towards this longer-term trend. So let's see what happens if we do get that decision on the exchange-traded fund for Bitcoin and see what happens there. And that's it really. I think before we jump into the stuff you want to have a look at, you know, just some other interesting markets. I mean, orange juice had a heck of a year last year. So this is the price of orange juice. If we go back to July 2022, it was around about 150, 160, traded as high as 430 last year, and it's dropped about 30% from those November levels. But the big trend in orange juice is still up. So I think that's an interesting market. Slightly outside the focus of many people when it comes to trading, but I think it'd be interesting to see what happens with orange juice. Now it's come back to its bigger trend, so that's another one that I've been keeping an eye on. But for me, you know, a bit of a tough week this week, and just feeling a bit non-committal either way at the end of the week. But quite interested to see what happens with, first of all, S&P 500, where it ends today. Does it mean we're going to start building a base for next week? And also dollar index, still selling off, but I absolutely would be tempted to be a buyer this afternoon. So for me this afternoon, the only trade I would do is the dollar index if it meets certain criteria. Criteria number one, that it stops dropping for a start. But I think that's maybe an interesting one for this afternoon. We've had the volatility. What does it look on the really short term? We've had the volatility over the payrolls. So again, we see this so often. this is why I think it's a bit of a mugs game trying to trade over the payrolls. So the unemployment numbers come out here. Oh, the market thinks this is absolutely brilliant for the dollar. Oh, actually, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's terrible. We have this headless chicken reaction by the markets, and I wonder if we'll see it perhaps start to calm down a little. So that is one for me for this afternoon. Everything else can wait till next week. But it's been a pretty volatile week. We have seen these relatively big sell-offs on stock markets that we haven't seen for a couple of months. It's only been 4 days of sell-offs, but we haven't. We've got to go back to October. We've got to go back 3 months, 2.5 months to see that. So I think it has been quite interesting. But let's see what happens next week. So what we'll do now, we'll take a look at some of the stuff you want to look at. But don't forget, to find out more, go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. You can join the WhatsApp group. You can join the trading course. You can sign up for the newsletter. There you go. 3 things to do before the day's over. But now let's take a look at some of the stuff you want looking at. Let's keep an eye on that dollar index while it's there. Exactly same situation as me. I had 4 losses in a row. Not sure if it's a strategy or just a weird time to trade. I thought that as well, actually. I think in hindsight, for me, it has ended up being a bit of a scrappy time for trading. But no excuses. It happens from time to time. I think that is the reality of trading. You'll sometimes have periods when you feel like you can do no wrong and you get lots of winners in a row, and you have periods where you feel you can't do anything right and you get lots of losers in a row, and then normally it's a bit more balanced than that. So I think it's always we talk about how important the psychology of trading is, and clearly that's one part of it, and it's how important risk control is. If you have 4 or 5 losers in a row and you're risking losing 10% of your account on any one trade, that's a big financial hit to take, and it's a lot to recover from. But for me, I'm quite happy to wipe the slate clean at the end of this week and have a look at it all with a fresh pair of eyes next week and see where it all is. Went short sterling yen, so about to have 5 losses. Let's have a look at that, sterling yen. Oh, that has been a bit like a rocket, hasn't it? That's another market that's been quite scrappy, I think. Big ranges over the last month or so, but fairly directionless. I think sterling yen, it's not breaking out. That's what sterling yen looks like on the dailies. It was Swiss yen I saw today. Swiss yen has been a great market, some great trends there, and it looks like it's breaking out again, I think. So for those who don't want to have the US dollar in their foreign exchange mix, I think Swiss yen could be an interesting one for next week. So, but big moves. I mean, just since the middle of December, the market's moved 800 points and a bit. So yeah, so some big moves in these markets against the yen. Microsoft and sterling yen. So we had a look at sterling yen. So sterling yen, I don't know sterling yen. I'd rather buy the dip. I don't know if I'd buy it up here. There is an argument for going short up here. If you thought these old highs, there you go, bang on it now, 184.30. If you thought those old highs on sterling yen were going to stop this rally, there is an argument for going short. I don't know what I think, to be honest. It's all been a bit sideways the last few weeks, so there's not much in there for me at the moment. Microsoft, MSFT. I have got Microsoft. I think I've got a trade open on Microsoft at the moment. I mean, I bought it because I bought it for a couple of reasons. The main one, it has broken out. It's not done much since it broke out, but it broke out to new highs. So for me, the old trend is up. So I'm long. I'd still be happy to buy a dip. The only question would be, where's your stop going to go? So for me, my stop is going to go at least the other side of 360, if not further, maybe even down at 320 if you want a wide stop. So for me, Microsoft trend is up. It's broken out to fresh all-time highs during November. We haven't seen much progress since then. Let's see what happens. But so for me, it's definitely more up than down. But if you wanted to go short, if you thought, well, actually, stock markets are going to be under pressure and Microsoft is not going to dodge that pressure, if I was going short, I'd have a stop above that high, the all-time high, 384. But for me, because of the trend and because of the breakout, I'm happy to stick with a long for now. PBR, Petrolero Brasileiro. Okay, apologies for the pronunciation. PBR, okay, Petrobras. Oh, Petrobras. All right. What do we think? Doesn't want to load. That's what we think. How's that not working? Oh, there we go. So what have we got here? We've got dailies. We don't have that much. Oh, we do have a bit more data. There we go. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So where's this listed? This is New York. So this is in dollars. So it was $75 in May 2008. And here we are. If you put your pension in those 15 years ago, you've lost 80% of it. But anyway, bringing it up to the current day. Is it breaking out? You could say it was breaking out, couldn't you? If you picked up on these highs. So I think there's a couple of trades here again, right? I mean, it does seem a little bit prone to the false breakout, but there's again absolutely an argument here to be a buyer or a seller. If you thought this was a breakout, then be a buyer with a stop somewhere. I don't know where. I'd probably have it below the December lows, to be honest, which is a wide stop, but that was the last big support. Or if you thought it was a false breakout, go short with a stop, I don't know, up above 18 maybe. The old highs from back here. I think it's a tricky one, that. So that's like a 4-year high almost back here. No, it's more than 4-year high, nearly a 5-year high. So that's a difficult one. You know, we've had a good trend up, bang, 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 bang. Sort of faffed around these levels, this $16, $16.60 level. What does it do next? Don't know. So, yeah, absolutely arguments for going long and short there. I would probably sit on my hands. Natural gas, we looked at natural gas, didn't we? Nvidia, we've not done those for a while, Nvidia. They were a great performer, weren't they? What have they done since? They've been a bit sideways, haven't they? What would you do? Great run from October 22, $114, up to $500 by September last year, but nothing since then. So, you know, absolute sideways range for Nvidia. So what do you reckon? Again, it's another one of these. I would do nothing, personally. You know, if I had to do anything, I'd probably go short and say, well, look, it clearly has not yet been able to make any progress, hardly, through $500 a share. It's currently $487. I'd sell short with a stop at $510 or something. If it breaks out properly through $500, it's different, but it's not done anything at all, really, has it, for the last 5 months or so? So yeah, wide range, 20% range from 500 down to 400, but it's all a bit sideways, isn't it, for me at the moment? So yeah, a bit boring. What's the one I've got that's doing well? I'm thinking of a US stock I've got that's done okay. AIG. So I'm in that. Oh, there we go. Love that. So that was a breakout stock I bought just before Christmas. So that for me, that to me looks like a clear breakout. That, so for me, that's one I would have a strong opinion on, and I do because I'm in it. But the market had been struggled with $65, $66, and then bang, 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 we gradually get the move through. So I think that's been an interesting one for me so far. Dollar index, we looked at the dollar index. What's it doing? Oh, it's really tanked actually since we started this. There we go. Still selling off. So that has really accelerated. I think it's still interesting though. I'd still be tempted to be a buyer. Interesting to see what happens down here. Wednesday lows. Let's see. Let's see what happens down here. But again, like I say, I want to see it stop going down. Yeah. How about Apple? Buy the dip on the daily. Apple. Let's have a look. They're having a bit of trouble, aren't they, with the Apple Watch, isn't it? They're not allowed. Is it in the US? They're not allowed to sell it because of some legal copyright technology infringement thing. I can't remember. Oh, Apple Watch ban temporarily paused. Okay. Anyway, whatever. Oh, that is quite the dip, isn't it? It's interesting that, isn't it? Because it did rally and it did very briefly. I think I would have been quite wrong-footed by that one if I was paying attention to it. It did very, very briefly have a little nudge out to all-time highs, fresh all-time highs in December 23. And it's just tanked since then. So it's off. Well, it's not tanked. It's come off since then. Buy the dip. Yes, if you were quite gappy, isn't it? Look at that big gap there when trading resumed. And gapped again on Thursday. what would you do? Yeah, I am always tempted to go against gaps like that. They've got earnings out. When are their earnings out? Oh, 25th of Jan. So not for nearly 3 weeks, isn't it? What would you do? I would be thinking about buying, but again, I'd want to see some stability first. So if we held above yesterday's lows into the close, there's perhaps an argument for being a buyer with a stop the other side of yesterday's low, but it's another one that I think being patient may be the better idea there. So it's a tricky one, the old apple at the moment. Let's see. Let's come back to it next week. A lot of the stuff I've looked at, this week is a bit like this, where I am, perhaps a lot more on the fence than normal. So let's see. But if you thought the move had been overdone, if it stabilised today, Apple, it's perhaps an interesting aggressive trade with the stop under the Thursday low. What's that dollar index now? I'm quite fascinated by this dollar index now because it is just getting absolutely clobbered. So the euro must be doing okay. Yeah, the euro is broken up. Okay, it should be interesting next week. Let's see if this dollar index can stabilise this afternoon. Otherwise, I think we're done, aren't we? So it's been an odd few days. Start of the year, perhaps that's not unusual. Stocks are going for it. I think it's going to be interesting where stock markets end the day. I think if we manage to end the day positive on the Nasdaq and the S&P, perhaps next week, that's when we see some of this weakness, this is the daily chart now, get turned round. So perhaps there are opportunities in there for next week. And like I say, the only thing I'm thinking about today is the dollar index. But if it carries on tanking like this, then I will be finished already, I think, for the week. There'll be nothing there for me to do. But let's see how it all finishes. It's always a bit odd, beginning of the year, end of the year trading. I think we'll be back to normal next week. And for me, it's all about probably US stock markets. So that's it. If you're not subscribed, click on subscribe because I might start doing midweek sessions as well to find out more about the training course I do, the WhatsApp group and the newsletter. If you go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, if you want to get in touch with me, you can do it via the website or drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. Otherwise, we're done for this quick look at what's going on in the first few days of this year. All those inflation numbers next week. Let's see what they look like. And I'll come back and do it all again on Friday of next week. So until then, have a good weekend and hopefully see you next Friday.